In this video, I'm discussing how you have missed Asperger syndrome in people, and these are 5 signs of Asperger's. All that coming up. Hey guys, welcome back to the TheAspieWorld. My name is Dan. I have Asperger syndrome, ADHD, OCD and dyslexia, and I make weekly videos on this type of content. So if you're new around here and you'd like to learn more about that, remember to hit the subscribe button by clicking the notification bell down below. And if you're watching over on Facebook, be sure to give this page a like and a follow to see more videos just like this one weekly. Okay guys, so what is going on? Welcome back to the TheAspieWorld, different thinkers, where we think differently daily. Going on? It's good to have you here. It's good to have you here and see everybody just tuning in and just having a good time. Today we're discussing something quite interesting. People actually miss Asperger's diagnosis in people a lot, and actually people mistake Asperger's for other things in people. Now, before we get started and everything else, I just want to say I have an Autism Hacks book, a free PDF book download for you from me as a little gift. So if you want to get your hands on my free PDF download book, there will be a link in the card above here, in the description below, and on the end slate, so you can go and check that out, or whichever way the end slate is. I'm not entirely sure which way this is. Anyway, all that being said, let's move on with this video. Okay, I know before everybody starts attacking me for using the term Asperger syndrome, I know that Asperger syndrome isn't used anymore. It was actually taken out of the diagnostic criteria and is now named autism spectrum disorder. It doesn't mean that Asperger's doesn't exist, it just means that they've used it with everything else and became a spectrum of disorders rather than just independent names of labeling, which is obviously way more complex. So, that being said, let's move on with this video. So there are basically a bunch of different reasons why people don't understand autism and see it in people, and that especially like people with like Asperger syndrome where they have lower support needs. And so I basically wanted to do this video explaining 5 Asperger's symptoms or Asperger's traits and signs of Asperger's, so that you can actually notice these and recognize them in people, because recognizing things like this in people is definitely going to save you a lot of hassle and aggro if that person is on the spectrum and they need a little bit of support from you, or if you're just curious about somebody being on the spectrum and you want to know if, you know, their personality traits kind of match up with that of autism. Right, if you want to get me on Instagram and Twitter, please do. I love talking to everybody on Instagram and Twitter. My name is on the screen here and I will always talk to you. So please do that if you want to reach out and have a conversation with me. Okay guys, so number 1 is eye tracking. Now, a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum will actually follow and track things. Like they'll track stuff with the corner of their eye, like especially smooth edges, like this phone. They'll just track it like that. Or if, like, say you're walking down a road and there's like a big long road and there's like a big wall, they like track the wall with their eye because it's following like a pattern, and they like to do that. So it's called eye tracking or eye gazing, but it's actually using their eyes to just gaze slightly and track something as a almost like, it's called stimming, which is a form of like sensory it's like a sensory stimulated behavior, basically. It's the best way of explaining that. But eye tracking is something that is definitely common and part of an autism spectrum disorder. Okay, so number 2 is bad anger management. Now, people with Asperger's will have explosive expression of emotions and outbursts of anger, like raw, like raging, like they'll flip tables and just like rah, because the communication part of their brain that takes information from the outside world and puts it inside, and all that is definitely a bit of a struggle with people on the autism spectrum, because it is a communication disorder at the end of the day, and communication is the way that everything works in the world. So having an issue with communicating your feelings and emotions, it causes like really bad anger management, an explosion, an eruption of things, which is sometimes quite really difficult to deal with, but it is definitely a common trait of Asperger's. Actually, in terms of myself, I've actually broken this hand twice, this hand once, and this wrist once as well, which is, you know, a byproduct of having really bad anger management. So yeah, definitely a trait to look out for, and it's definitely part of an autism spectrum condition. So number 3 is quite an interesting one. This is giving unrelated answers to questions. Now, people on the autism spectrum are almost, I don't know, I don't want to say they're disconnected, but they're kind of thinking a little bit more outside of the box. They're looking at things from a different perspective. Now, this can occur when somebody asks a direct question to someone on the autism spectrum, and then the person on the autism spectrum may reply with something that's completely unrelated to the question that was asked. And not because they aren't listening, it's just because they're engaged with something else that's going on, or they're actually thinking about it in a different way and thinking about something else and not sure how your question relates to what they are doing. And this is very, very common with people on the autism spectrum. spectrum to not actually give related answers to a lot of questions that they're asked, and a lot of the time they'll give unrelated answers to questions when they're being asked or interviewed by something, which is very, very interesting. Okay, so number 4 is something called echolalia, but basically it's repeating words or phrases under their breath. So when you're talking to somebody in the autism spectrum, they may actually talk to you and then they'll like mumble under their breath the same thing that they've just spoken to you. Like they'll say something and then a minute later they'll just say the same thing but under their breath to themselves, which is like repeating it, almost like they've learned a script in their head to talk it out, and then they're just going over that script again to make sure that they actually said that correctly, which is really interesting. And this one came about, it's part of something called echolalia, which is repeating things that they heard or recall of things that they have heard. Like I learned a lot of my vocabulary and my accent from television and movies, but in terms of this one where they're talking just under their breath, it happens because they are repeating a sentence that they have been practicing to make sure that they can answer this specific question or this input of conversation at that moment in time, and they want to make sure that it's right. And it's very, very interesting. And I noticed this because a lot of other people on the autism spectrum told me that they did it as well, and I was like, wow, I thought it was just me. Okay, so at number 5 is unusual reactions to the way that things sound, smell, or taste. Now, autism comes with something called SPD, and SPD stands for Sensory Processing Disorder. This is a comorbid or co-occurring bolt-on condition that comes hand in hand with autism. Now, it means that you may have an autistic person who will be partial to different textures or smells or tastes or sounds. Like they may not like the sound of certain things, like a freezer tray coming out of the freezer and rubbing on the ice could be quite devastating for them, or maybe having soup going cold and touching their lips is very overwhelming for them, or having food on a plate but then having them to separate the food out so the other foods don't touch each other, because that again could be a sensory overwhelming experience. Now all these wrapped in together cause a obviously disruption in the lives of people on the autism spectrum, but also is a good way of indicating if the person who have these behavioral traits is on the autism spectrum, because these are very, very common with people on the autism spectrum, and people who have got low support needs, like people diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, will display pretty much all or most of these traits, or these personality traits, within their daily life and in their routines. Now, if you think this video can add value to somebody's life, please share it on Facebook and Twitter. That would be absolutely fantastic. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, leave me a comment because I'd love to engage with you, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.